All right, Racquel, Goldy, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I can't believe it's been like a year basically since we met. That's so crazy.
I know, full circle with when we were doing stuff in the music industry and Tony Robbins, and even diving through some of your story. I've seen kind of some of the pivots you've taken with when COVID's been here, and so we'll get to that. But super interesting. And so I'm curious for you if you could kind of give our listeners just kind of like a look at like what did life look like for little Racquel growing up.
So little Raquel was obsessed with dance. I grew up dancing my whole life. Dance was literally all I cared about. I hated school.
Yeah.
I was like, why do I have to go to school, Mom? I'm going to be a backup dancer and like tour the world. That's all I cared about. And I really had no other intention. Like I knew I wanted to get into the hosting space eventually. I grew up
Right.
watching TRL, millennials, you know what TRL is. And I was so obsessed with the VJs who would interview the artists because to me it was so interesting that the VJs got to be the ones who was kind of the connection between the artist and the fan. I got to do the hosting and talk about music and talk to the artists and ask the fan questions. And I guess from dancing to and doing so many different styles and listening to so many different genres of music my whole life growing up, like
Yeah.
I found it so interesting to know more about the artists and how they came up with the music and
Yeah.
little me was thinking about these things, which is so weird and not normal for a child, but artsy Raquel, here we are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was competitively dancing and it got to be like senior year of high school. And I was like, I'm moving to LA and I'm not going to college and I'll eventually get to hosting and do that and, all that stuff. And I was pretty shy actually growing up because I had done theater and stuff as well, but I really was just so focused on dance. And it wasn't until like, I would say sophomore year of high school that I became comfortable public speaking because I was in peer counseling and we had to do all these presentations and stuff. And I remember my senior year, I was doing a presentation by myself because none of my group members were there that day. And one of the teachers I was presenting, she was like, you should be in broadcast, like you should be in broadcast journalism. You should go to school for that. And I was like, thought about it actually. Like I definitely want to get into that eventually, but dance. So
Yeah.
it was basically World War III in my house every day when my parents brought up college because I took all the tests. I did SAT, ACT, but I mean, I was a really bad test taker, like the test taking anxiety, that
Yeah.
whole situation.
Yeah.
So I finally took it. I got a decent score, got into colleges, but I still was like, I'm going to
LA.
LA. Like that's where I'm
Yeah.
going. Mind you, I had never like lived on my own or really, was a very sheltered child. So my parents were like, how are you cooking for yourself? And I'm like, I'll figure it out. I'm like,
Yeah.
great. Okay, Raquel. Burned down the apartment. Still a horrible, horrible cook. But yeah, so I was debating on going to school for musical theater or journalism. So I had been looking into different colleges with both programs. And obviously for musical theater, you had to audition. And I was like, I don't really want to know if I want to get a degree in musical theater because what can you really necessarily do with that? Like, yes, I'll get to do all these awesome classes, but I feel like I should really get a degree in something else like journalism.
Right.
So that way, because I wasn't going to get a degree in dance because I knew how to dance. So I was like, all right,
Right.
that's not
Yeah,
going
you're good.
I could probably teach the classes. So I wanted to go to the University of Alabama. We toured, they had a really great dance team. And I was like, okay, I can audition for the dance team. And they did all the huge competitions and they were nationally ranked. And I was like, all right, I could do that. And then I could still go to school for journalism and kind of get the best of both worlds. And I was dead set. I was like, I love it here. This is great. And I had been in Florida my whole life. So I was going to be able to get out. And then I was boarding a plane to New York. I was in chorus as well when I was in high school, and we were going to sing in Carnegie Hall. Craziest experience. And I'm in the airport at like 5 a.m., those awesome flights. And one TV is the wedding, like the royal wedding. And this is 2011. And the other is the huge tornado that basically destroyed all of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And that is where University of Alabama is. It basically literally destroyed the entire city of Tuscaloosa except for the school, the college itself. The mall I had gone to was gone. The hotel I had stayed in was gone. Everything, it looked like a bomb went off in Tuscaloosa when you saw it on the news. And I just
Right.
remember my parents calling me at the airport being like, have you seen the news? Are you looking at the news? And I'm just standing there in the airport getting ready to board my flight. And I had no idea what was going to happen with my life. Like I thought I was going to school there, and my tuition was literally due like 5 days later or something like that. And so we were only in New York for a couple days, or maybe a week later. So we were only in New York for like 3 days. I flew back. I toured FAU because I had Florida prepaid and all that stuff and Bright Futures. And
Right.
I was like, I don't want to go here. I just want to move to LA. This is meant to be. I should just go to LA. Like
Right.
that,
It's a sign.
I was like, timing is everything. This is the
Yeah.
timing. Like, this is it. And then I ended up going to FAU, and I'm so happy I did. And I had such a great experience there, and from someone who hated school so much. And my parents made a deal with me. They were like, listen, if you get your AA and you still hate life and you hate school, you can move to LA, you can transfer and take it from there. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, I hate
Yeah.
school. This is going to be great. But of course, I ended up doing a theater minor. So my first 2 years of college were like all my theater classes. So I was like, this is great. Like, I'm
Yeah. Way
living my
better.
best life. Yeah. And I was teaching dance at the time. I ended up starting teaching and working for a studio and choreographing and helping run their competition team. So I was still getting to dance, and I ended up breaking my foot. So that was kind of the huge transition into journalism. And I ended up interning at a radio station down here, and I loved it. I was so obsessed. I had
Yeah.
the best time. I learned so much. And then by junior year of college, you get into all your journalism classes, like full throttle. That's all I was taking. And I was so obsessed with every single class. I had so much fun. We had, even to this day, like my professors say, Racquel, you had the best class I've ever had. You guys were all friends. You guys all loved
Love
each
it.
other. Like, you had so much fun, and we all helped each other. We got each other internships. Like, it was just one of those things that I don't think I might ever experience ever again in my life, like
Yeah.
that kind of camaraderie and friendship. And I'm still friends with everyone. We still speak, like check in on each other. And this is now
That's
6 years
amazing.
post grad. So I mean, it's just was such a great time. And I started my
Yeah.
own YouTube channel when I was in college and interviewed artists and really got to start doing what I wanted to do, because I was like, all right, well, if I'm not going to do it, who's going to do it? No one. Or
Right.
someone else is going
Right.
to do it because they did it.
Right. So let's jump back, because that is a journey that you went on in
Yeah,
life,
journey.
right? And
Yeah,
and
it's
one of the
always something
things,
with me.
and it's beautiful. And one thing that I'm curious of is like the decision you talk about between going to LA and staying in Florida, and your dream was wrecked in Alabama. It's like you talked through that very smoothly, but I'm imagining that if we went back into that moment of being in the airport, landing back in Florida, having 3 days to pay the admission, like
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could walk us through kind of that in a little bit more detail, and like how did you really ultimately figure out I'm going to stay in Florida versus like this big dream I'm going to go to LA? How was
Yeah.
that?
I mean, honestly, I didn't really know. And I was a senior in high school, and I don't care, what life experiences you go through. Obviously, some have more than others, but like
Yeah,
that was a major like I feel like my first really major life decision that
for
I had to
sure.
talk through with my parents. And I was like, oh, is this what being an adult is like? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because I'm 17 turning 18, and I'm like, I'm going to move to LA and like la-di-da unicorn land. I think it's all butterflies and unicorns. And my parents are like, we're not paying for that. How are you affording that? I'm like, oh, right. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
What? So I was like, I'll just teach dance. Yeah, okay, Raquel, 1,000 people teach dance in LA. Like, good luck. They're gonna let a newbie in. Sure. But yeah, no, I just honestly, it just kind of happened, truly. Like, it was just like, all right, well, this is the opportunity here. I should take it, because I was admitted for summer. So it basically was like, finish, graduate college. I was actually going to Chicago for 2 weeks or a week for this huge dance conference thing that I was in. And then I started school like right when I got back. So it was
Gotcha.
just kind of like, this is what I'm going to end up doing. And we'll kind of go from there, because it was roll with the punches. I don't really know what else is going on, because ultimately it was like LA is going to be there. So, and then once I made the
Right.
deal
It's
with
not
my
going
parents
anywhere.
of being like, okay, and I still went. I would spend months there. Like for winter break, I went for a month and I took classes and I did all this cool stuff. Then I would come back, and then for spring break, I would go because my friends lived out there. So it's not
Right.
like that was completely just cut out. I like went and surprised my best friend at the time who lived there too. And like, I was like, oh, it's Labor Day or whatever. Like, peace out. I'm going to LA. So I was still going back and forth. And then once I really started getting into my journalism stuff, like that's when everything started shifting. And I had broken my foot. And that was kind of a really huge, like life shattering moment for me
Yeah.
because then I had like
Dance.
arthritis and it was just like a whole thing. And obviously a dancer's lifespan is not very long. And if no one knows, but like your body obviously cannot handle
Yeah.
all of the craziness. And I was definitely one of those people that I was like, ooh, like hit 21. Ow, I can't move like I used to. That really hurts. Like my foot was broken. And then I ended up breaking my other foot a couple years later. And I was like, all right, like
Jesus. What kind of
choreograph.
dancing are you doing?
I mean, it was just like all the years of,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I tumbled too. So all that stuff, like your body just
Yeah.
pounding and pounding.
Eventually,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's,
So one thing that's really interesting, I think you say, is like, so in my own life, I went to college for a little bit, left for a couple years, came back, left, and eventually finished. But
yeah.
one of the biggest similarities I had to you was school's not going anywhere, right? Like
Yeah.
you said, like LA is not going anywhere. And I think sometimes as we go throughout our life, we have this sort of like life or death situation that we build for ourselves where it's like, well, I can go
Oh,
to
yeah.
LA and I got to figure that out, or I can go to school, but whatever one I do, the other one's no longer an option. And it's like clearly
So
in your
dramatic.
story, and yeah, it is, and it makes the decision so much more heavy and
Hmm.
weighted and feeling like this is life or death. When the reality is, if you make one decision, the other option's always there most of the time,
Right.
right? You
Right.
can
Like we
always,
live in how where we live now. Like we can go back to school, you can take online classes, you can move, you can still I
yeah,
honestly like I was looking at community college in California, but the thing honestly was that I had Florida prepaid and I had Bright Future Scholarship. So I was basically did not have to pay like anything to go to college. And if I
yeah,
didn't,
huge,
you know, the thing with Alabama is they were like going to take some of it or something. Like that was why that was an even better option because whatever, some colleges do that, but
yeah.
California was not. So it's
They
going to
make
be
you
like,
pay.
yeah, it was going to be God knows how much money
Not
plus
cheap,
rent
yeah.
plus this. And I was like, I had no concept of money. I had no idea anything. So yeah, I'm glad I'm not in debt because of that decision.
Yeah, because with the millions and millions of other people that when they were 17, 18 said, oh, $50,000 for school, let me sign. And all of a sudden, a couple years
Yeah,
later, you're like, $50,000?
that was
Um,
dumb.
yeah, yeah. So let's keep going in your story. So you go to college, you break your foot,
Mm,
kind of have this massive realization of like, wow, dancing like that can't be forever. And then
hmm.
you really start getting into journalism and you really start going down that path.
Yeah,
And I'm curious for you as you got to kind of like the tail end of college, what was going through your mind there? Because you seem like you were pretty certain on you knew what you wanted to do. So I'm
I
curious,
was.
as you left, were you like, I'm gonna go do this and that and this, or was kind of walk us through that?
Yeah. So I am very much so like I'm going to do this. Like I know I'm going to do this. And everyone in school knew I was like I'm going to host News. That's going to be my thing. I'm the
Yeah.
next Juliana Rancic. Like this is it. And even my professors knew I was not trying to do hard journalism and we would get spot stories for like NPR radio and my professors bless their heart would give me stories about like illegal fireworks because they're like fireworks Raquel. I'm like
Yeah.
yay. And my friends were getting stories on illegal red light cameras for like 5 weeks in a row. And I'm getting women empowerment and illegal fireworks. And they were so mad.
Yeah.
But I was like, thanks, guys. Thanks,
Yeah.
professors. Here's like a
Appreciate it.
present, a Starbucks gift card at the end of the semester. But yeah, no, it was, I don't know. Everything kind of really fell into place for me. And I would say it really happened again interning at iHeartRadio in Miami when I think it was going into my junior year. So it was that summer before. And it was before I got into like all of my really intense broadcast journalism classes. And I learned so much because I asked questions. And the first day of the internship, the producers said, if you want to learn, ask questions, we're willing to, answer them. So they let me be on the radio. I did some radio spots. I was at the pool parties. I was doing promotions. I was doing programming. I was talking to people. I was talking to the artist managers who came in. Like everything I wanted to learn and was doing, I got to do. So then when I went into my first real broadcast journalism classes, I already kind of had a step up because I knew how things worked.
Yeah.
And journalism or on camera or anything of that nature, producing, if you're not doing it, you don't know. Like I look back and think about what I did in college, and I learned a lot. I learned how to speak, but being on set or being in the station and it's completely different because you're actually in it. But I really am grateful for that. And then I had a moment. I think it was it senior year of college or junior year of college? I was always watching. This is when YouTube was becoming really large, like really big. 2014, all the YouTubers and vloggers, and this was all becoming a thing. And I would sit and I would watch artist interviews, and I would be so mad because these people would not know how to ask these questions because they just had a lot of followers or a lot of subscribers on YouTube. And my best friend was like, "Why don't you start your own YouTube channel?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, sure. Why not?" So we stayed up all night, and she was going to school for something like entertainment industry, same kind of thing. All my best friends work in music now, which is so great. But so we wrote a really great pitch email to all these publicists. And at the time, everyone's PR email could be found on Facebook. So I looked up, I spent all night looking up who was going to be coming from Miami to Orlando and who was, obviously the sky was the limit. We were pitching some really big people.
Yeah.
You knew it wasn't going to happen, but whatever.
You might as well go for it.
Might as well. So we sent out a ton of emails. I didn't hear anything. And then I was like, well, I tried. And then that kind of fell by the wayside. Then I randomly get an email. She was visiting me. Courtney, we're like in my apartment trying to figure out like what football game we're going to wear, what we're going to wear to the football game.
Yeah.
And I get an email from Chris Allen's publicist. Chris Allen won American Idol. It was him and and Adam Lambert. So he won.
Yeah.
And I loved Chris Allen. My tap solo, LOL, my junior year of high school was to his cover of Heartless. So it was like full circle moment for me, right? And I get an email, "Hey Racquel, sorry we missed you in West Palm Beach," because I actually went to the show in West Palm with my friends and we saw him perform. And I was like, damn, I really would have wished I could interview him. And "Sorry we missed you in West Palm, but would you like to interview him in Orlando?" And I was like, oh my God. Mind you, did not have a YouTube channel, did not have a camera, did not have a name for my YouTube channel, like because no one had written me back. So I was like, all right, whatever. Full panic mode, like goes to get the camera with Courtney, makes a YouTube channel, has to come up with a name. I text like all my friends in college, what's a good YouTube channel name?
Yeah.
And we finally come up with one, drive to Orlando. I tell all my professors, I feel like it was like right before midterms or something. I was like, I have to drive to Orlando tonight because I'm going to interview Chris Allen. Bye. And they were like, okay, bye. Like, have fun. Be safe. Good luck. Because made myself sound important. But yeah, that was my first interview, like big interview. I was with Chris Allen. Wild. He was so sweet. I look back at it. I'm like, oh God, it was so bad. Because I was so nervous.
Right.
Obviously.
But you took your shot.
Yeah, I took my shot and he was so nice. His team was so nice. They let us stay for the show because they were like, oh, are you staying for the show? I'm like, we don't have tickets. They're like, tickets? What? We're putting you on the list. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then, and then like from there, that's just how it was. I kept getting interviews and I don't know, like my Chris Allen interview, he has really dedicated fans. So my first interview had over 1,000 views on YouTube, like when I posted it, and I was freaking out. I was like screaming in my apartment. My roommates thought someone was dying. I'm like, guys, what? Because he retweeted it. Chris Allen retweeted it, and I lost my mind. And like from there, it was it. But yeah, no. And then I kept doing that, and then
I ended up. A couple things I want to pick apart because there's so much.
Yeah, no, I have a wild story.
Yeah, so many. So like, first thing I heard is like with iHeartRadio, I think that was such a powerful gift that whether it was your boss or whoever this person was that gave you this advice, such a beautiful piece of advice of like, ask the questions because we will answer them.
Yeah.
Right. Because
it was my boss. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like asking those questions allowed you to take the next step and the next step and the next step in your life. And I think sometimes we go and do, whether it's an internship, whether it's a job, whether we just bump into someone randomly and there's almost this sense of like, well, I'm an intern here and can I ask these questions? And is that a stupid question? Are they going to judge me? And it's like, rather than any of that, it seems like you almost had this philosophy of like, I can ask questions. Like I'm going to ask this dumb one, this smart one, this one that I have no idea. And it's like, because you gave yourself permission to ask the questions, now you're so much further ahead in life because of that. And I think that's just, for anybody listening to this, it's like, ask questions. And that's something we talk about all the time on this podcast is like, one, the questions you ask yourself are powerful, but then also like in your situation, what questions are you asking the people around you, the knowledge, the wisdom that you can get from them. And then one other thing that I want to ask you is, that's kind of a casual mention of, oh, and I got this internship at iHeartRadio, like
Mm-hmm.
one of the most known radios, right? So I'm curious, how did you even get that internship? Like how did that
So
happen?
honestly, knowing the right people, truly. So I ended up working for this tennis tournament when I was in college, and I was kind of like intern slash promotion girl slash got to do some in arena hosting stuff with them, which was my first real taste, which was really cool. And one of the on air hosts had done it previously. So she was at auditions, and I went up to her and I talked to her. I was like, hey, I know you guys have interns. I love your show. I've been here my whole life. Like I'm in school for broadcast journalism.
Yeah.
When do you literally, again, just asking questions, you can't be afraid.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh my God, here's my email, send me your resume. Had to make one, obviously. And
Yeah.
then, whatever. So then she connected me with the producer, on air guy, my boss, who was hiring. And I had to apply, I think. I think I had to apply online. And then
Right.
they called me in and were like, this is what it is. Can you work these days, these hours, not paid? You're getting school credit. And I was like, okay.
Done.
When do I start? Like, done.
Yeah.
And I actually ended up staying longer than everyone else because I was supposed to train the next intern class. And then I was actually the last intern class iHeart ever had.
Really?
So they got rid of
Wow.
interns. I don't know why, but yeah,
Yeah.
it was
And
crazy.
kudos to you too, of like, oh, there's this lady over there. She works for this company that I love, and it's an awesome company. Like, let me go just talk to her. Again, like
Yeah.
another situation where it's like in life, honestly, we don't know the people who are around us. And in this case, you did, but it's like having a random conversation with a random stranger, or seeing someone that's near you that maybe works for a company. It's like,
Yeah.
to just say, in a sense, almost like, screw it, I'm going to go talk to them, I'm going to have this conversation, the worst that happens is no. And it almost seems like that's kind of been a philosophy you developed in your life, is like,
Oh
kind of
yeah.
screw it, I'm going to do it, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, like, whatever. I'm curious, what's like allowed you to have that kind of philosophy, because I think so many people do kind of get into that, like, well, I could fail and it could not work, and kind of the negative. But it sounds like time after time, and I've seen this in your story too, it's like you've just allowed yourself to try something, to do it, and a lot of the time it's worked out really well.
Yeah.
But what's allowed you to kind of take that philosophy versus the other?
I think I just really knew that if I wasn't going to do it for myself, no one was going to do it for me, because
Mm,
I had been signed to an agency in high school for acting, dancing, modeling. So I knew what it was like to like have an agent, but I also knew what it was like to not have an agent. And I knew that if you want to book a gig, you got to talk to people, because it's not just going to come by osmosis and be like, okay, universe, I want this, and then just land in your lap. So I
facts.
think honestly too, after booking the Chris Allen interview, or was that after? I don't even remember, but I don't remember the order. But there had been obviously things that had led up to me getting and booking things. And I mean, once I knew Nina was there, and I loved her. I'd literally listened to her every single day growing up. So, and I knew she danced growing up, and we had some people in common that we knew. And again, it's like, okay, she's sitting over there. She's very approachable. When am I ever going to get this chance ever again? Maybe never. And I'm going to
Yeah.
be so mad at myself if I miss the opportunity to intern and learn so much. And
Yeah.
I knew once I decided I was going to school for journalism and then I was staying here, like I wanted to intern at Y100. I wanted to do that. I knew I had to do it. At the time, it was like the highest rated show, all in
Yeah.
Miami, like top 10 market. It had to be like, that's what needed to be done. So again, I was like, well, might as well go talk to her and see what
Yeah.
happens. And she was so sweet. And I mean, here we
And
are.
that's how
So
it happens a lot of the time too, is it's like I used to work for Vans, the active
mhm,
sports company, and I took
love
the
fans.
owner's son, Steve Van Doren, to lunch one day, and like everyone in the company was like, you're taking him to lunch, like, how'd you do it?
You're like I
It was
asked.
this big thing. Yeah, I was like, I asked him if I wanted to go to lunch, and then I went to lunch, he thanked me, he ended up buying the lunch. He's
Right.
like, it's a business expense, like, we'll put it on the company card. I was like,
Sure.
and one thing I think you said that I think every single person listening to this needs to hear, that is such gold, is whether you live a life you love or whether you live a life that you don't love, it's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And sometimes we get caught in these situations of, well, I don't get this job because of this, or I'm not doing what I love because of this. It's like at the end of the day, if you're doing something you love, like one of the things I used to always say is, if I succeed, it's my fault. And if I fail, it's my
Yeah.
fault. But either way, regardless of what your life looks like, it is your fault. And sometimes that's a large pill to swallow. But
Mm-hmm.
I think like in your situation, it's like, okay, well, if I live this life I really am stoked on, it's my fault. So let me do the things that I need to do to build that.
Yeah. And listen, I've done stuff for free. I worked for free for 4 years, basically, because I needed to make a reel. And I mean, I basically, once I graduated college, worked for free for almost 4 years, because I was going back and forth to Nashville. I was the country music correspondent for this digital website. They weren't paying me. They were paying for my travel, but that was it. So,
Yeah.
and then I worked my way up. I got to interview some of the biggest country music stars on red carpets and festivals and all that stuff. But I was still teaching dance at the same time
Yeah.
to get some income. And, I think that's the biggest misconception about content creating, hosts, anything of that nature, journalism. Like, oh my God, I see, Juliana Rancic on E! News and she must make a lot of money, or Erin Andrews, who works for has a contract with whatever TV network. And it's like, no, like, you're not making a lot of money until you get to, probably until like recently, which is so crazy. And I'm 6 years post grad, and that is something very real and that I always talk about, because it looks like I'm living my best life and doing all this cool stuff, which I am, but it kind of just comes with the territory because I'm covering the event, or I've met the right people, or I asked. So yeah, I mean, and I think too, now we live in a world with like TikTok stars and all this stuff, and they're making all these, this Dunkin' Donuts is sponsoring them, and like, that's great, but that's not everyone. And I think that is very important to disclaim.
Yeah. I'm curious, what would you say is the biggest thing you got working for free? Because I've worked for free many times, and I know why I do it, but I'm curious why.
Yeah.
Like, what's the biggest thing you've got out of that?
I mean, the experience. So in college, we didn't study TV. I was multimedia journalism broadcast. So it was radio and writing, but I knew I wanted to do on camera. So I basically had to teach myself everything, which was obviously a very uphill battle post grad. So I got to cover red carpets. I got to, talk to the biggest country music stars, fly to festivals, do all this really cool stuff that I would have never been able to do if I didn't work for free, because I didn't have that experience. So then I got a really great reel out of it. I paid someone to make my first reel, and that's how I basically got my job with the Florida Panthers, the NHL team, because they were like, oh, this girl's been doing all this really cool stuff post grad. She interned at Y100. She interned at the CW, the South Florida affiliate. So then that right there, like, the most important thing for me is to have a good reel. And that's why I was doing it. And obviously to get some street cred working, because I didn't want to be on the news. I didn't want to do hard journalism. And that was pretty much like the only other way I was going to be able to get a reel, because it's not like I was going to be able to be like, E! News, I'm here. I graduated from college with a degree in journalism. Like, okay, 1,000 million other people want this job too. Like, good for you. So that's why I worked for free. And I mean, I still do stuff for free. If it's cool enough and like, it's worth it for me, obviously I have to know my self-worth, and I need to, it's worth it. But if it's some like crazy thing, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I'm going to do this.
Cool the ego, do it for free. There's a lot of opportunities. And one thing too, I think is, and this is kind of a piece of advice I was given from my brother, is he said that basically, like, whatever you want to do, whatever the end goal is, it's almost like, what is your staircase to get there? Mm-hmm. And if you want to be doing this big thing, you're on red carpet. It's like, well, that's too big of a step to do the first step. So it's like, well, what's the first step? If the first step is doing it for free, getting the reel, right? It's like, that allows you to do the second step. And it's like, if you can just look at, well, what are the steps I need to take in order to get to where I want to be? It can kind of help you break it down in a little bit of a simpler manner.
Totally. The best thing I ever did for free was cover the Billboard Music Awards red carpet. And it's going to be something I'm never going to forget. Literally my entire life. Like, I like blacked out, honestly, because it was so crazy. Like, you walk in, and I'm walking past E! News and Billboard and Access Hollywood, and I'm just like, what am I doing here? Like, am I here? Is this a dream? Like, what is happening? Yeah. And I mean, it was the craziest experience. And it was honestly like the best award show I'd ever seen too, because award shows can be kind of boring when you're there and it's like
Yeah.
next and there's, I've been to
Right.
enough that they're boring, but it was when the Jonas Brothers were coming back, BTS and Halsey performed, Paul Abdul performed, Mariah Carey. I mean, it was just like the best day of my life. And still, this was 2 years ago now. And it was the last Billboard Awards before lockdown. So the fact that I got to be at that and experience that, like, you take things for granted. And I think that is the number one thing that lockdown taught me is like, I was like, oh, I could go to the Billboard Awards this year. Nope, the Billboard Awards didn't happen. And then they were virtual and no one was there. And it's just everything in my industry has changed so much that
For sure.
I have really now sat down and like took a look back at what I've done and be like, wow, I'm lucky I even got to do that now, because who knows when it's going to happen next.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy, everything that's changing in your world. And one thing too, I think that I just want to add in there, as far as like doing something for free, the experience you get and all of that, I think another massively important part of it as well is like the connections you make, the people you meet, because it's like you may do something for free. And I mean, technically, sort of at the end of the day, no one really knows if you're doing it for free or not. So like,
no one knows. No.
Right. So you put yourself in that place where you're doing stuff for Billboard. It's like you may meet people that could lead to an opportunity later. And, whether it's a job, whether it's an internship, whether it's your own business and it's a business partnership, it's like you never know, just by doing something for free, it's going to put you in an environment where you can build a network. And kind of like you were talking about earlier, it's like it's really about who do you know,
Yeah.
and all of that. And so, Racquel, this has been just gold after gold after Goldy, right?
Yes.
With your last name. And so I'm curious if people want to get more on everything you're up to. I know you got the podcast, you're doing a lot of stuff on YouTube as well, and
Yeah.
kind of all over. If people want to get more info on you, where's the best place to see what you're up to?
Honestly, my Instagram at Racquel Goldy, super easy. You can find everything on there. My podcast is Millennial Girls Podcast, Millennial_Girls on Instagram. My YouTube's Racquel Goldy, like everywhere. Racquel Goldy, you can see. I'm doing so many different things now, and I think that has been the beauty of quarantine as well. Is like I lost my job, but I've gotten to kind of develop all these other really cool projects and still more coming. So we'll see what happens.
Love it. Love it. And so last question I have for you, ask this to every guest, because we're about people helping find direction here, but we want to do it through execution, right? You gotta be moving in some way, shape, or form to figure it out. And so I would be curious, what would you say is one thing someone listening to this can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start finding direction in their life?
I think doing research and thinking about what you really want your life to look like and what industry you want to work in. Because, how many people want to be like, I want to work in the music industry or I want to do this. I mean, you can, people do it. I'm in it. So if you want to do it, add the right people on LinkedIn, start, researching. If you think you need to take a class because you're not qualified, there's so many different classes now. I mean, I even during quarantine took a Billboard NYU Tisch like music industry class because I needed to I wanted to learn some more things. So you don't be afraid to educate yourself, and don't be afraid to reach out to people.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Awesome. Well, Racquel, again, this has been an honor. Thank you so much for being with us on the podcast. Lots of golden nuggets throughout this whole thing. Thank you so much. And I know people are going to get a lot of value. So thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.